Looking past Pan, walking with some friends of mine yesterday, I noticed that my magnolia in here is flowering. It's always very exciting when, especially a magnolia, which is renowned for taking quite a long time to flower, comes into flower, and that the flowers are quite attractive. This is a magnolia called Magnolia cathcartii. And I think with its great long filaments and stamens, I rather fancifully think of it as a lady with long eyelashes. A rather peculiar scent. I don't know whether it's pleasant or not. Sweetish, spicy, and it's found really at lowish elevations from India, Sikkim, Vietnam, Myanmar. This particular specimen was collected on Mount Fancy Pants, as I keep thinking of it, which is the highest mountain in Indochina. It's in North Vietnam, and has been the subject of several plant collecting expeditions. In spite of coming from lowish elevations, and you would expect this to be fairly tender. However, this is surprisingly hardy, this magnolia, as are a lot of the plants around the mountain Fansipan. Several rhododendrons and magnolias and so on. I think because the valleys there were subject to glaciation in the last ice age, and these plants survived the cold and have bred into them a residual hardiness. I think that's the explanation. Robert Cathcart, after whom this magnolia is named, was a civil servant with the British East India Company in the 1820s and 30s and died in Agra in 1840. He was a very keen amateur botanist. So this Wollemi pine, which isn't a pine at all, a member of the monkey puzzle family, is starting to produce some cones, but unlike the monkey puzzle we know here, this one has male and female cones on the same tree. So that's the jingly dangly male cones. If we look up, you can probably see in silhouette. So there are some more up there, but there are also bobbles on the ends of the branches at the top. And these are the female cones, or seed-bearing cones. One of the park rangers of the National Park, New South Wales, and two friends were exploring the area about 200 kilometres from Sydney, called Wollemi National Park, after the Aboriginal word meaning look about you or watch out. They peered down a canyon and discovered a very strange looking stand of trees. So Dave Noble, the leader of the group, abseiled down, collected some fallen leaves and branches and stuffed them in his rucksack, took them to the botanists in the Botanic Garden in Sydney, and they said, "Oh, this looks like a cycad or a fern." He said, "I don't think so, they're 30-metre tall trees." Long story short, they were matched exactly with the fossil record of trees which had existed for about 200 million years and had died off, become extinct, or so they thought, 2 million years ago. So this is great excitement. Here is a fossil tree with its characteristic bobbling chocolate bark, and it was named botanically in 95 Wollemi from the region it came from, and Nobilis after Dave Noble. His two friends were rather miffed, of course, saying they were in on the discovery, but he said, no, it's Noble because the tree is noble, and not because my name is Noble. So I don't know whether they swallowed that or not, but there it is. Now, looking to all intents and purposes like a normal monkey puzzle. I say normal, I mean the ones that we grow here come from Chile. This one is slightly different. This one is Araucaria angustifolia. It's got thinner leaves, spines, and when it's mature it'll throw out great long shoots with tufts on the end, and you can see a bit of that happening now at the top. This is quite a tender one from Brazil. It also comes from the very north of Argentina. It's not survived here before, but this one looks terribly keen and healthy. And finally, the monkey puzzles. There's my 40-year-old tree with its male cones, which are quite distinctive. In the last video I offered you a tongue twister, and in this video I offer you another. Pulling back from it, it is really the most untidy grower. Tall and lanky, and then it throws its arms around all over the shop. Reminds me of an adolescent, a teenager, all arms and legs and gawk. This is Photinia nitacayamensis from Taiwan, and actually these clusters of flowers will become bright red berries later in the season, so a bit more decorative perhaps, especially against the dark green of the leaves. Now here's a particular favourite of mine, a sort of scrambling clematis. This is called Durandii, and it's a lovely purple with a yellow cream eye. It's an old-timer, introduced in 1870 by Durand, a French nursery, by crossing the truly herbaceous Clematis integrifolia with the larger flowered Clematis jackmanii. Here we've got a lovely flowering tree with a beautiful smooth bark, white flowers in the summer, and a fantastic autumn colour. So a really good small tree for a garden, I would say, with 3 items of interest. This is Stewartia pseudocamellia. The flowers, I suppose, look a bit like a camellia flower. Bertie on guard, looking out for squirrels maybe, or just surveying his domain. Turning away from Bertie for a minute, I want to show you this lovely grey-leafed Holly olearia from New Zealand, in full flower with its little daisy flowers and toothed grey leaves. Nice scent from the flowers as a bonus. Honey scent. It's been here for many years and appears to be perfectly hardy. Coming up behind the alpine beds, there's a cut leaf suckering shrub. This is from Australia, and it's called Lomatia scylifolia. It's got most lovely honey-scented flowers. Many Lomatias do have. The traditional way of growing this startling climber from Chile, a nasturtium, which is called Tropiolum speciosum, speciosum being beautiful. And it's traditionally grown through a yew hedge like this, and I think it's perhaps because the darker green of the yew makes these scarlet flowers show up better. Coming up the path, there's this delightful little gladiolus relative from South Africa. which used to have a more romantic name, Lapeyrusia, but is now Anomatheca laxa. And what's more, it does tend to produce different coloured flowers. A flower with a red inside but paler petals. That's just seeded itself there, in amongst the more normal ones. Very pretty thing. It's been here since 1985. I planted the first bulbs of this, and it's just spread about and seeded happily. Looking out of the window, I saw this pink cosmos, obviously the annual cosmos which we grow in Mexico, and I thought how fairly similar it is, obviously, as a cosmos, to the tuberous cosmos I've got further along in the garden, which I'll show you now, which was collected in Mexico. And here is that tuberous cosmos. Comes out of a tuber collected in Mexico by my friend, and you can see the similarity in the flowers. I've always wondered why this is a cosmos coming out of a tuber like a dahlia and not a dahlia, because there's that chocolate cosmos that people grow, again a bit like a dahlia, and I'll show you a little dahlia which I've got growing a bit further along in the garden. Well, from a cosmos that looks like a dahlia, we come to this dahlia which looks like a cosmos. This is Dahlia murkii, and it's not surprising it looks like a cosmos because they're all from the same family, the Asteraceae, which is an enormous family of daisy flowers. Now, where the cosmos sort of dances about in the wind in a rather charming way, this one doesn't so much, and that's because the stems are rather thicker, because they are supporting a sort of candelabra of buds, which is what dahlias do. They produce quite a lot of buds on the one stem to take over from the others, and so you don't get that sort of lightness of effect with this. But it is going to be absolutely covered with its cut-leafed foliage and pretty flowers. This is a lovely dahlia. By way of a diversion from Dahlia murkii, I thought I'd just show you this lovely blue foliage conifer from the South Island of New Zealand called Phyllocladus alpinus. Phyllocladus because these modified leaves are actually called, or phylloclades, and rather nicely there are pink pollen cones forming in the axils of these leaves. Makes it rather decorative. It never gets very big, and its grey leaves are rather attractive, I think, and textural. Of course, I can't let you go without seeing this, my pride and joy, the full flowering of the Californian horse chestnut, Aesculus californica, which does produce naturally a wonderful rounded medium-sized tree, but quite widespreading. And coming up to it, let's just take a look at the flowers, which are magnificent and sweetly scented as well.